The two films that correspond most to the topic of API gender roles are The Debut and First Morning. In The Debut, a Filipino-American family is hosting a traditional Filipino party for their daughter. It focuses on the second-generation experience and the gender roles that come along with them. In The First Morning, the theme of gender ideologies was being played out in the experiences of the first generation. These traditional expectations of women and men are challenged within this film.
The 3 obediences and 4 virtues were principles set for women from Confucianism. Confucius is a teacher and philosopher who had tremendous influence on Chinese and many other Asian cultures. The 3 obediences include obedience to father when a woman is young, obedience to husband when married, obedience to oldest son when husband passes. The 4 virtues include the expectation for women to do housework, appearance, speech, and ladylike behavior. However, many of these traditional gender ideologies and expectations are challenged when different Asian groups migrate to the United States. Being in a new environment and female working because of the higher economic needs, many families walk on the ideology tightrope where the gender roles are balanced and redefined. Although Professor Ocampo was not familiar with the concepts of 3 obediences and 4 virtues within the Filipino culture, this is how he felt.
I think this is one where you have to think about the structural conditions in which women from the Philippines are migrating to the United States. There's a lot of times in which women, because they're entering the realm of nursing, are coming into this country with that particular job, and their level of income is affording them a little bit more agency and power in a relationship in a heterosexual relationship between them and a husband, in ways that I think are allowing them to have more say and not fall into these traditional gender binaries.
There are 2 ways of thinking about what happens to groups when they become part of a new culture. The first is assimilation, in which new groups conform to the dominant group's culture. This paradigm compares society to a melting pot, but some scholars argue that the assimilationist paradigm is not representative of reality. The second way of thinking about what happens to groups when they become part of a new culture is acculturation, in which there is selective practice and incorporation of the dominant culture while still maintaining one's own cultural practices. This paradigm compares society to a salad bowl. When thinking about how it is applied to gender roles, individuals would incorporate dominant ideals of gender roles while still maintaining their own culture's idea of gender roles. According to Dr. Ocampo, this paradigm is reflective of the way in which second-generation Filipinos understand gender roles.
I think second-generation Filipinos differ from first-generation Filipinos because they're socialized in a country that's completely different, right? I think that the degrees to which women are allowed to embrace their sexuality in the United States is much greater, even though sometimes we joke that the United States is a puritanical country. And I think that in terms of second generation men, depending on where they grow up, they adopt certain notions of what it means to be masculine. So you see sometimes second generation Filipino men that grow up in neighborhoods that are predominantly communities of color. They're going to adopt certain styles and presentations of self that are similar to African Americans and Latinos, right? But if they get socialized in a place that's predominantly white, their performances of masculinity or what they understand to be masculine might shift based off what they see are the tastes of white men or white Americans.
Third space is the gray area between 2 perceived distinct concepts, terms, that has the potential for new practices and expressions of identities and culture. Filipino lesbian is an example of a third space, since Filipina and lesbian are perceived as 2 distinct terms where Filipina is on the far left and lesbianism is on the far right. Therefore, the third space, the gray area in between, is the blend of the 2, Filipina lesbian. In addition, hybrid terms like Filipina lesbian have significance in 3 ways. The term Filipino lesbian can provide a new area for critical and examination, a newer form of identity or culture, and a need to express, claim new identities or cultural formations. Finally, we asked Dr. Ocampo how are same-sex relationships typically perceived in Filipino culture.
I think that the Philippine society has had a long history of having LGBT people, visible in movies, visible on TV shows, but what you'll notice is that the particular roles that they have are very caricatured, right? They don't necessarily have full lives, they're just kind of there for comic relief. And you know, the Philippines is a country where they don't even allow divorce, let alone same-sex marriage. And so I think that the very Catholic orientation of the country has played a role in hindering same-sex marriage or other LGBT rights in the Philippines. Manny Pacquiao, one of the most well-known Filipinos in the world, compared LGBT individuals to animals and said, even animals know that same-sex relationships are wrong. They know better than LGBT people. And obviously there was a shitstorm of outrage that happened after that. But I think the problem with the Manny Pacquiao example is that homeboy is running for Congress. He's running to be a senator, and he's very openly expressing these homophobic views. And I think that what I like is that there's a lot of backlash, but I mean, it's a really, really terrible thing when you see the most internationally recognized Filipino saying anti-LGBT statements such as that. So, F you, Manny Pacquiao.